Everyone at the mansion believed they were watching the end of Nora Blackwood. Her husband had locked the gates, his lover had moved in, his mother was laughing, the staff stood frozen, the cameras were recording, and Nora, the wife everyone underestimated, stood outside with one suitcase and the kind of silence that arrogant people mistake for defeat. But this was not her ending. This was the first move. Inside the mansion, billionaire developer Julian Blackwood was celebrating what he thought was his freedom. His $5 billion megaproject had just received another wave of financing. His lover, Marissa, was unpacking in Nora's bedroom. His mother, Evelyn, was raising a glass and joking that Nora could finally learn what poverty feels like. And upstairs, Julian's aunt was already planning how to erase Nora from the family foundation records. None of them knew Nora had spent the last 9 months buying the one thing Julian could not build, charm, threaten, or inherit: control. That morning, through a series of private holdings and silent negotiations, Nora acquired majority control of Meridian World Bank, the global financial institution backing Julian's massive development, the bank that financed his towers, the bank that guaranteed his contractors, the bank that approved the credit lines covering his delays, lawsuits, and overextended promises. Julian thought the bank was his weapon. It was Nora's now. A flashback tells the real story. Years earlier, before the mansion, before the magazine covers, before Julian became the face of luxury development, Nora was the only person who believed in him. She reviewed his contracts when his lawyers missed details. She hosted investors when he could not afford catering. She smiled through dinners where his mother corrected her accent and his aunt questioned her background. When Julian nearly went bankrupt, Nora quietly sold shares in a company no one knew she owned. He never asked where the rescue money came from. He simply took it. Then he changed. The more powerful Julian became, the smaller he tried to make Nora feel. He paraded Marissa through hotels. He let Evelyn insult his wife in public. He allowed his aunt to bury Nora's name under legal paperwork. And when Nora finally confronted him, he did not apologize. He changed the locks. The foreshadowing had been there all along. The bank delays, the sudden document requests, the compliance review, the Penthouse ownership transfer Evelyn never read, the warning letter Marissa ignored after opening credit accounts tied to Blackwood assets. Every trap had already closed. Nora only needed Julian to reveal himself. So when he said, "This mansion belongs to me," Nora glanced at the security camera and answered, "For tonight." By morning, his business accounts would be frozen. His $5 billion megaproject would stall in front of the world. Marissa's credit would collapse under disputed luxury charges. Evelyn would be locked out of the penthouse she called home. And Aunt Claudia would find herself on the sidewalk with eviction papers in her hand. Nora stepped into the rain, made one call and said, "Activate the audit." Behind her, the mansion lights flickered. Not from the storm. From the beginning of Julian's downfall. The man on the other end of the line did not ask Nora to repeat herself. He knew her voice now. For 9 months, she had spoken only through lawyers, signatures, boardroom proxies, offshore counsel, trust representatives, and carefully placed acquisition agents. To Meridian World Bank, Nora Blackwood had first appeared as a name behind a holding company, then as a silent investor, then as an unavoidable force. By the time the final voting shares transferred, the bank's oldest directors had learned one important thing about her. She never threatened. She documented. "Madam Chair," the compliance director said quietly, "do you want the review limited to Blackwood Urban Holdings?" Nora stood beneath the storm-washed glow of the mansion lights. Behind the locked gate, Julian was still speaking, still performing, still raising his voice so the guards, the staff, and the woman replacing his wife could hear him. Nora looked through the bars at the man she once believed was brilliant. "No," she said, "everything tied to Julian Blackwood, his companies, his personal accounts, his emergency facilities, any credit instruments connected to Marissa Cole, any residential assets connected to Evelyn Blackwood, Any foundation transfers handled by Claudia Blackwood start tonight. There was a pause. Not hesitation. Recognition. That will trigger automatic reporting. It should. It may stop contractor payments by morning. It will. His project will halt. Nora's face remained still. Then perhaps, she said, he should not have built it on lies. She ended the call before the director could respond. Rain tapped against the pavement, soft and steady. Nora did not move immediately. She wanted the cameras to keep recording. She wanted the mansion's security system, the guards' body cameras, the gate footage, and the hidden camera installed above the side pillar to capture everything. Julian's raised hand, Marissa's luggage rolling across the courtyard, Evelyn laughing from the balcony, Claudia's silhouette moving behind the upstairs curtains. Most people collect memories when love dies. Nora collected evidence. "Madam," one of the guards said from inside the gate, his voice low, "should I call a driver for you?" Julian turned sharply. "Do not speak to her." The guard froze. Nora looked at him with the kind of calm that made him lower his eyes in shame. He was young, perhaps no older than 26, dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark tie. She remembered his name, Tund. His wife had given birth 3 months earlier. Nora had sent a gift quietly because the staff bonus Julian promised had never arrived. "No need, Tund," she said gently, "but keep your records safe." The guard swallowed. Julian laughed. "Records? Nora, you are embarrassing yourself. You are standing outside my gate with one suitcase talking like a movie villain." Evelyn laughed louder from the balcony. Her gold lace wrapper shimmered under the balcony lamps. Her jewel stood high and proud like a crown built from arrogance. "Leave her, Julian. She watched too many revenge dramas. Tomorrow she will call begging." Marissa, standing near the doorway in a cream outfit with shopping bags hooked over one arm, glanced back at Nora. She tried to look triumphant, but there was something nervous in her eyes. Nora saw it clearly. Marissa had received the warning letter. She had ignored it because Julian told her to. Nora remembered the first time she saw Marissa. It was at the Lagos Business Leadership Gala, beneath a ceiling full of hanging crystal lights. Julian introduced her as a brand strategy consultant for Blackwood Urban Holdings. Marissa was beautiful, polished, and ambitious in the way of someone who had studied wealth from outside the glass. She laughed at Julian's jokes before he finished them. She touched his arm as if testing whether Nora would flinch. Nora had not flinched. That night, Julian told her she was imagining things. 3 weeks later, a diamond bracelet appeared on a company expense report under client hospitality. 2 months later, Marissa opened a luxury charge account using an address connected to Blackwood Residential Holdings. 4 months later, Evelyn started inviting Marissa to private lunches. 6 months later, Claudia drafted a reputation management plan that described Nora as emotionally unstable in the event of a divorce. 7 months later, Nora began buying the bank. By the time Julian moved his lover into the mansion, he was not betraying a wife who had just discovered his cruelty. He was betraying a wife who had already built the courtroom in her mind. Nora picked up her suitcase handle. Julian leaned closer to the gate. "Where will you go? Your charity friends, one of those little women's business meetings you waste time on." Nora looked at him through the iron bars. "I am going home." "This is your home." "No," she said, "this is your evidence." For the first time that night, Julian's smile thinned. He did not understand the words yet, but his instincts recognized danger. Julian Blackwood had not become powerful by being stupid. Cruel, yes. Proud, absolutely. Entitled beyond measure, but not stupid. A man who builds towers learns to hear the smallest crack in concrete before everyone else hears collapse. "What did you say?" he asked. Nora turned away. Behind her, a black sedan rolled quietly to the curb. It had been waiting 2 streets away for 20 minutes, instructed not to approach until she walked away from the gate. The driver stepped out with an umbrella, but Nora lifted one hand. She did not need shelter now. She needed distance. The car door closed behind her, and the mansion disappeared through rain-streaked glass. Only then did Nora allow herself to breathe. Her phone vibrated before the car reached the main road. A message from her lawyer, Amara Okonkwo. Gate footage secured, mansion staff statements pending, bank action initiated, do not answer Julian's calls. Nora stared at the message. Then another arrived. Also, congratulations, Madam Chair. Nora leaned her head back against the leather seat. Madam Chair. The words should have felt victorious. Instead, they felt like standing at the edge of a grave for the woman she used to be. Once she had loved Julian Blackwood so fiercely that she mistook sacrifice for partnership. She met him before the mansion, before the luxury interviews, before his name became a headline people whispered with admiration. He had been a brilliant young developer then, sitting in a crowded restaurant in Victoria Island, with rolled blueprints under his arm and holes in his confidence he tried to cover with charm. He spoke about building cities within cities, homes with dignity, offices that would attract global investors, waterfront districts where Nigerian ambition would no longer need foreign approval. Nora, who had grown up watching her father lose land to men with better lawyers, understood the power of ownership. She listened, corrected his financial assumptions, and told him where his projections were weak. Julian stared at her that night as if he had found gold. Most people tell me the dream is beautiful, he said. It is, Nora answered, but beauty does not repay debt. He laughed so loudly, the waiter turned. That was the first time he called her dangerous. Back then, he meant it as praise. When his first investor pulled out, Nora found another through a former classmate. When his loan application stalled, she rewrote the risk brief. When his contractor threatened to walk away, she sat through 2 nights of negotiations while Julian paced outside and cursed into the dark. When the project finally opened, Julian thanked God, the governor, his investors, his mother, and the resilience of Nigerian entrepreneurship in his speech. He forgot Nora. She told herself it did not matter. Love, she believed then, did not need applause. That belief cost her years. At 6:12 the next morning, Blackwood Urban Holdings' payroll request failed. At 6:19, the emergency project facility attached to the Blackwood Atlantic District was suspended pending compliance review. At 6:26, Julian's personal wealth management dashboard displayed a message he had never seen in his life. Temporary restriction, contact your financial institution. At 6:31, his chief financial officer called him 12 times. Julian was asleep beside Marissa in Nora's bed when the first call came. He ignored it. The second call made him curse. By the 6th, he sat up and grabbed the phone. What? He barked. His CFO, Darpo, sounded as if he had been running. Sir, Meridian froze the operating accounts. Julian blinked. What are you talking about? The project accounts, the contractor payment accounts, the bridge facility, some personal linked accounts too. They are requesting documentation. Documentation for what? I do not know yet. They used the phrase enhanced compliance audit. Julian swung his legs off the bed. Marissa stirred beside him. Call Ademi at Meridian, Julian said. Tell him I said release the accounts. I tried, sir. And he said he no longer has authority. Julian stood. The room suddenly felt colder. What does that mean? Darpo hesitated. There has been a change in control at the bank. Marissa sat up, rubbing her eyes. What's wrong? Julian ignored her. What change? I am still confirming, sir. Then confirm faster. He ended the call and immediately dialed the private number of Henry Ademi, the Meridian executive who had treated him like royalty for years. Henry answered on the 4th ring. Julian, he said. No, sir, no warmth. Julian noticed. Henry, what nonsense is happening with my accounts? I am not permitted to discuss an active review outside formal channels. Julian stared at the window. Morning sunlight spread across the marble balcony. Formal channels, Henry, this is me. Yes, Henry said, that is precisely the problem. Julian's grip tightened around the phone. What is that supposed to mean? It means the review involves you, your companies, and several affiliated parties. All communication must go through counsel. Have you lost your mind? No, I have received new instructions. From who? The silence on the line lasted just long enough to frighten him. Then Henry said, the chair's office. Julian's throat tightened. The chair, Meridian does not have a chair who interferes with client accounts. It does now. Who? Henry exhaled. I suggest you speak with your wife. The call ended. For a few seconds, Julian did not move. Marissa watched him from the bed. Julian. He turned slowly. Nora. The name did not fit inside his understanding of the world. Nora did not control banks. Nora controlled dinner menus, charity meetings, polite smiles, quiet rooms. Nora knew how to stand beside him in photographs. Nora knew how to forgive. Nora did not freeze billion-dollar accounts. But somewhere deep in Julian's memory, a door opened. He saw her years ago at a dining table covered in loan documents, telling him a particular clause was dangerous. He had laughed and asked when she became a banker. She had circled the clause in red anyway. 2 weeks later, his lawyer discovered the same issue and called it almost disastrous. He saw her sitting beside an investor's wife at a gala, speaking softly while the men discussed politics. The next month, that investor doubled his commitment. He saw her in his first office, holding a payroll spreadsheet, saying, "You cannot delay workers' salaries and expect loyalty." He had told her construction men were used to waiting. She paid them from her personal account. He found out only when one foreman called her, "Madam who saved us." He should have asked questions. Instead, he punished her for the answers. Downstairs, Evelyn's scream cut through the mansion. Julian rushed from the bedroom, Marissa following in a panic with her robe tied tightly around her. They found Evelyn in the main living room, holding her phone as if it had bitten her. "What happened?" Julian demanded. Evelyn's face was pale under her makeup. "The Penthouse card is not working." Julian frowned. "What?" The building manager called. "They said my access has been revoked." "Revoked, Julian, to my own penthouse." Marissa stopped near the staircase. Julian's chest tightened again. "Call them back," he said. "I did. They said the legal owner has terminated my occupancy." "That is impossible." Evelyn's voice sharpened. "Exactly, tell them it is impossible." Julian took the phone and dialed the building manager himself. The man answered with the careful tone of someone who had already been warned. "This is Julian Blackwood." "Yes, sir." "Why was my mother's penthouse access revoked?" "Mr. Blackwood, the occupancy authorization was withdrawn by the property owner." "My family owns that penthouse." "No, sir." Julian's jaw clenched. "Be careful." "I am being careful, sir." "Who is listed as owner?" "I am not permitted to disclose beyond what was provided in the notice. All questions should go through Mrs. Nora Blackwood's legal representatives." Evelyn grabbed the edge of a chair. Marissa whispered, "Oh my God." Julian lowered the phone. A memory returned uninvited. 3 years earlier, when one of his hotel projects faced a liquidity crisis, he had moved several family residential assets into a temporary restructuring arrangement. Claudia handled the paperwork. Evelyn complained that signatures bored her, and Julian told her not to worry because Nora likes reading these useless documents. Nora had sat at the far end of the table, reviewing page after page, while Evelyn mocked her for being slow. What are you even looking for? Evelyn had asked. Mistakes, Nora said. Claudia laughed. There are no mistakes, I drafted it. Nora looked at her then, calm and unreadable. That is why I am checking. Julian remembered snapping at Nora to sign and stop delaying everyone. She signed. But apparently, she had read more than they thought. By 8:00 a.m., Blackwood Atlantic District was no longer a construction site. It was a rumor with cranes. Workers stood in clusters near the entrance, helmets tucked under their arms, while supervisors shouted into phones. Concrete deliveries were paused. Steel shipments were held at port. Foreign contractors demanded assurance letters from the bank. Local subcontractors threatened to leave if payments did not clear by noon. A project that size did not stop with drama. It stopped with silence. Machines idled. Elevators hung unfinished. Trucks waited in lines that stretched toward the expressway. The billboard at the site entrance still showed Julian Blackwood smiling beside a shimmering model of the future. Luxury, power, vision. Below the billboard, a worker spat into the dust and said, "Vision does not pay school fees." News traveled faster than official statements. By 9:15, business bloggers were posting, "Trouble at Blackwood Atlantic." By 9:43, a finance channel reported, "Meridian World Bank freezes facilities tied to major Nigerian megaproject." By 10:01, Julian's investors were calling. By 10:22, his political allies stopped answering. At 10:40, Marissa's first card declined. She was at a luxury boutique on Akinna de Sola Street, trying to buy clothes because Evelyn insisted she should not wear that timid cream outfit for the media storm that might come. Marissa handed over her black card with the confidence of someone who had learned to perform wealth before owning it. The cashier swiped. Declined. Marissa laughed lightly. Try again. Declined. She tried another. Declined. Then her phone vibrated. Account under review. Another message followed. Credit line suspended pending investigation of disputed charges. Then another. Please contact issuer immediately. Her mouth went dry. The sales assistant, who had been smiling moments before, looked away in embarrassment. Marissa felt heat rise behind her eyes. She stepped outside, dialed Julian, and hissed when he answered. My cards are not working. Not now, Marissa. Not now, do you understand what I just said? Julian was in his study, surrounded by men in suits and panic. Everyone's accounts are under review. Why mine? He closed his eyes. Because you were foolish enough to use Blackwood addresses. Because you accepted cards tied to holding companies you never understood. Because every bag, every flight, every hotel suite, every jewelry purchase you thought proved you were chosen had become a trail. But Julian did not say that. He said, Nora is being vindictive. Marissa's voice cracked. You said she had nothing. Julian opened his eyes. For the first time in years, he hated the sound of his own lie. Across town, Nora sat in a private conference room at Meridian World Bank. The room was all glass, pale wood, and quiet power. Lagos stretched beyond the windows, bright and restless. The city had seen empires rise and fall before breakfast. Nora wore a simple navy dress, pearl earrings, and no wedding ring. In front of her sat Amara Okonkwo, 2 senior compliance officers, a forensic accountant, and 3 legal advisors. On the wall screen was Julian's empire. Not the glossy version. The real one. Blackwood Urban Holdings at the center, dozens of subsidiaries around it, property vehicles, foundation transfers, personal guarantees, luxury expenses, political donations, contractor disputes, residential assets, offshore loans, credit instruments attached to Marissa, occupancy rights attached to Evelyn, legal transfers handled by Claudia. It looked less like a business empire and more like a spiderweb made by someone who never expected rain. Amara clicked her pen once. The audit will hold. The documentation is strong. The question is how aggressive you want to be. Nora looked at the screen. How legal can we be? The forensic accountant smiled faintly, extremely. Then that is how aggressive. One of the bank lawyers leaned forward. Mrs. Blackwood, we should prepare for public accusations. He will say this is domestic revenge. It is not domestic revenge, Nora said. It is risk control. Yes, but perception. Perception is what my husband built his career on. Reality is what we will use to answer him. The room went quiet. Nora did not raise her voice. She never needed to. People who shout often hope volume can replace authority. Nora had learned from men like Julian that quiet certainty frightened power more than anger ever could. Every contractor who is owed legitimate money must be protected, she said. Workers first, small vendors next. No innocent person should suffer because Julian over-leveraged his ego. The compliance director nodded. We can create a ring-fenced payment review. Do it. Amara looked at her and Julian. Nora turned toward the screen. The image displayed one document in particular, a personal guarantee Julian had signed 2 years earlier. He had signed it quickly during a celebratory dinner at Eco Hotel, too excited about expansion to read carefully. Nora remembered that night clearly because she had warned him. Do not sign after champagne, she had said. Julian kissed her forehead in front of everyone, smiling like a generous king. My cautious wife, he said, always afraid of thunder. She saw Claudia watching from across the table that night, her expression sharp. Claudia knew what the clause meant. She knew Julian was tying personal wealth, family assets, and future receivables to the project's performance triggers. She knew because she helped write the structure. Nora had asked Claudia quietly afterward, why would you let him sign this? Claudia answered, because men like Julian do not respect gates unless they are locked behind them. Back then, Nora thought Claudia was warning her. Now she knew Claudia was bragging. Trigger the guarantee review, Nora said. Amara's eyes flicked up. That will corner him. No, Nora said, he cornered himself. We are only turning on the lights. At noon, Julian called Nora 86 times. She did not answer. He sent messages first with rage. You have no idea what you are doing. Then with command. Call me now. Then with insult. You are embarrassing yourself. Then with bargaining. Let us talk like adults. Then finally with fear. Nora, please. She read none of them until Amara placed a printed copy on the table for the legal file. At 1:30 p.m., Julian arrived at Meridian World Bank. He did not come quietly. He stepped out of his convoy in a black kaftan, sunglasses on, jaw set, security trailing behind him. Cameras were already outside. Nobody knew who tipped them off. Julian assumed Nora did. He was wrong. His own investors had started leaking before breakfast. A man's enemies are rarely as dangerous as the people who once needed him to succeed. Reporters shouted questions. Mr. Blackwood, are your accounts frozen? Is the Atlantic District project collapsing? Did Meridian pull financing? Is your wife involved? Julian ignored them and marched inside. He expected doors to open. They always opened. Receptionists straightened when he entered. Junior bankers scrambled. Executives smiled too widely. For years, Meridian had treated him like a national asset. That afternoon, security stopped him at the private elevator. Sir, do you have an appointment? Julian removed his sunglasses slowly. The guard did not blink. Do you know who I am? Yes, sir. Then move. I cannot, sir. Julian stared at him, stunned by the simplicity of refusal. Henry Adami appeared from the corridor before Julian's anger could become a scene. Julian. I want to see whoever is responsible for this madness. Henry folded his hands. You may submit communication through your counsel. I funded half this bank's prestige. No, Henry said carefully, you borrowed from it. The words landed like a slap. Julian stepped closer. You are making a mistake. Henry's expression hardened. That sentence has appeared too many times in too many emails from you, Julian. Today, everyone is reading them differently. For one dangerous second, Julian looked as if he might push past him. Then the private elevator opened. Nora stepped out. The lobby changed without anyone moving. She was not dressed like the woman at the gate. There was no rain in her hair, no suitcase by her side, no locked iron bars between them. She stood in the bank's marble lobby with Amara beside her and two senior directors behind her. Julian looked at her as if he had found a ghost wearing authority. Nora, he said. She stopped several feet away. Julian. He looked around, too many eyes, too many cameras beyond the glass doors, too many employees pretending not to listen. What have you done? What you taught me, Nora said. His nostrils flared. Do not play games. I stopped. You froze my accounts. The bank froze, accounts tied to compliance concerns. You are the bank. A few people in the lobby lowered their eyes. Nora did not answer immediately. She let him stand inside the question. Then she said, I chair the board controlling the bank. Julian's face changed. He tried to hide it, but Nora knew every version of his pride. This was the version that bled behind the eyes. You bought Meridian, he asked. Majority control. With what money? She almost smiled. For years he had asked that question only when annoyed by her independence. He never asked when her money rescued him, never when peril cleared, never when investors arrived, never when his first land dispute disappeared because she paid a lawyer from her own trust. Now, suddenly, her money mattered. With mine, she said. Julian stepped back, as if the word had weight. Yours. Yes. That is impossible. You say that often before learning it is not. His mouth tightened. Nora, listen to me, whatever you think happened last night. What I think happened, her voice stayed soft. You locked me out of my home, moved your lover into my bedroom, allowed your mother to mock me from a balcony, and let your aunt prepare documents to erase me from a foundation I helped build. He glanced at Amara. This is marriage drama. No, Nora said. This is a financial institution reviewing risk exposure. You are my wife. I was your wife at the gate. Silence. Henry looked down. Julian's jaw worked, but no words came. He had prepared for anger. He had prepared for tears. He had prepared for Nora to make demands he could call emotional. He had not prepared for grammar. Was. One word can sometimes do what a courtroom cannot. Nora turned to Henry. Mr. Adami, please have legal send Mr. Blackwood the formal channels again. He appears confused. Then she walked past Julian. He grabbed her wrist. The lobby froze. Nora looked down at his hand. Julian released her immediately, but the damage was done. The cameras outside could not see it, but the bank cameras did. So did the witnesses. So did Amara, whose eyes sharpened with professional satisfaction. Nora looked at him. Do not mistake my restraint for permission. He lowered his voice. You will destroy everything. No, she said. You did that. I am separating the wreckage from what can still be saved. At 3:00 p.m., Evelyn arrived at the penthouse. The Blackwood penthouse sat above Lagos like a palace in the clouds. Evelyn loved telling guests that the elevator opened directly into greatness. She had hosted senators there, pastors, designers, society wives, and women she pretended to like. She had posed on the balcony for magazines, calling it the family jewel. That afternoon, the elevator did not recognize her fingerprint. She tried again. Access denied. Her driver stood behind her with 2 shopping bags and the stiff posture of a man pretending not to witness humiliation. Madam, the concierge said carefully, management has instructions. From who? The owner's representatives. I am the owner's mother. Madam, with respect, the owner is Mrs. Nora Blackwood's holding company. Evelyn turned slowly. The concierge had worked in that building for 7 years. He had seen billionaires drunk, politicians sneaking, actresses crying, and pastors arguing over champagne bills. But he had never seen Evelyn Blackwood speechless. My things are inside, she said. Yes, madam, arrangements can be made for supervised collection. Supervised, Evelyn repeated. By appointment. Her voice rose. Do you know how many people I have brought into this building? Do you know who I am? The concierge's expression remained painfully polite. Yes, madam, that is why I am trying to be respectful. Evelyn slapped her handbag against the reception desk. Call Julian. I believe Mr. Blackwood has also been notified. Evelyn's phone rang before she could respond. It was Claudia. Do not go to the penthouse, Claudia said. I am already there. Claudia cursed under her breath. Leave. What is happening? Nora is not who we thought. Evelyn hated fear in other women. She hated it more in herself. Explain. Not on the phone. Claudia. Leave the building before press gets there. Evelyn turned toward the glass entrance. Outside, 2 bloggers were stepping out of a car with phones raised. For the first time in years, Evelyn Blackwood moved quickly without trying to look elegant. Across town, Claudia was already packing. She did not pack like someone afraid. She packed like someone who had spent a lifetime preparing exits. Claudia Blackwood was Julian's aunt, his father's younger sister, and the family's unofficial surgeon. She cut problems away before they infected the family name. Unpaid debts, pregnant mistresses, angry partners, failed contracts, dangerous journalists. Claudia knew where documents were buried because she had buried many herself. She had never liked Nora. Not because Nora was weak. Because Nora was observant. At family dinners, while Evelyn performed class and Julian performed greatness, Nora listened. When Claudia made jokes with hidden blades, Nora noticed who laughed late. When papers were placed before her, Nora read footnotes. When people praised the Blackwood legacy, Nora asked where the workers lived. A woman like that was dangerous in a family built on polished omissions. So Claudia tried to erase her early. She told Julian not to give Nora formal titles. She advised Evelyn to keep Nora away from sensitive matters. She structured the family foundation so Nora's contributions appeared as voluntary support rather than founding leadership. She moved assets between holding companies and assumed Nora lacked the appetite to follow the trail. Then one evening, 9 months earlier, Claudia received an email from an unfamiliar legal office requesting clarification on a dormant property trust connected to the Penthouse. She ignored it. 3 weeks later, Meridian requested updated beneficial ownership documents for several Blackwood entities. She delayed. 2 months later, a compliance officer asked why Marissa Cole's luxury credit activity appeared linked to corporate hospitality accounts. She called Henry Adami directly and told him not to embarrass the family. 4 months later, she received a formal notice that the family foundation was under review for governance inconsistencies. She blamed Nora in her mind, but dismissed the thought. Nora, after all, was too soft. That phrase returned to Claudia now as she stood in her townhouse, looking at 2 suitcases on her bed. Too soft. Her doorbell rang. She checked the camera. A bailiff stood outside with 2 legal representatives and a building manager. Claudia did not move. Her phone buzzed. A message from Amara Okonkwo. You were served electronically at 9:04. Physical service is now being completed. Occupancy was tied to a guarantee instrument now under review. Please comply peacefully. Claudia stared at the message. For the first time in years, she felt something close to admiration. Not affection. Not regret. Recognition. Nora had not attacked the Blackwoods where they were loud. She attacked where they were lazy. By evening, Julian's crisis had become national entertainment. Every channel had a version of the story. Some called it a banking dispute. Some called it billionaire marital revenge. Some called it the fall of the most arrogant developer in Lagos. Social media did what social media always did. It turned pain into captions, captions into jokes, and jokes into judgment. Old videos resurfaced. Julian saying, "Behind every great man is a woman who understands her place." Evelyn saying in an interview, "My son built everything with discipline." A clip of Nora standing silently beside Julian at an award ceremony while he accepted a trophy for visionary leadership. In the comment sections, people began asking questions. Who was she? Where did her money come from? Why had nobody ever heard her speak? By 8:00 p.m., a former Meridian analyst posted anonymously that Nora had once saved Blackwood's first project by correcting a loan model. By 8:30, a retired contractor gave an interview saying, "Madam Nora paid us when Ogre Julian delayed. We never forgot." By 9:00, a charity director released photos of Nora funding women-owned businesses across Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and Enugu without publicity. Julian watched the stories from his study, his face hardening with every new revelation. Marissa sat across from him, mascara cleaned away, hair pulled back, panic making her look younger. "Did you know?" she asked. Julian did not answer. "Did you know she had money like this?" "I said I do not want to talk. You told me she was nothing without you." Julian turned on her. "Do you want to blame me now?" Marissa stood. "My name is in investigations because of you. Because of me, you were happy to spend. You gave me the cards. You accepted them. You said it was safe." Julian laughed bitterly. Everyone believes things are safe until Nora decides she is powerful. Marissa looked toward the doorway where Nora's portrait still hung in the hallway. The staff had not removed it. Nobody dared. "She did not decide today," Marissa said quietly. "We only found out today." Julian stared at her. That sentence sounded too much like truth, and he was tired of truth. "Get out," he said. Marissa blinked. "What?" "I need to think. Where am I supposed to go? My cards are frozen." Julian looked away. There it was. The great romance, reduced by banking restrictions. Marissa laughed once, sharp and wounded. "You locked your wife out for me, and now you cannot even get me a hotel room." Julian did not respond. In the silence, the mansion felt enormous and empty. The lover he had moved in had become another liability. The mother who laughed now hid upstairs making desperate calls. The aunt who once solved everything was no longer answering. His staff moved quietly, avoiding eye contact. Power had drained from the house without anyone touching the chandeliers. At 10:15 p.m., Nora returned to a different home. Not the mansion. A penthouse she had never used. It sat on the top floor of a quieter building in Ikoyi, overlooking water that caught the city lights in broken gold. The furniture was simple, elegant, untouched by Evelyn's taste for excess. Nora had bought it years earlier under her own name, not as escape, but as proof to herself that she still existed outside Julian. She placed her suitcase near the bedroom door and walked to the window. Her phone rang. This time she answered. Julian's voice was low. Nora. She said nothing. He inhaled, "Come home." The words were so absurd, she almost closed her eyes. "Which home?" "You know what I mean. The one you locked me out of." A pause. "I was angry. You were organized, the codes had been changed. Marissa's luggage was inside, your mother had champagne, Claudia had documents prepared. Do not insult me by calling planning anger." His breathing changed. "Nora, you are hurting innocent people. I am protecting them. Workers will be paid through controlled review. Small contractors will be stabilized if their claims are clean. Your investors will receive accurate disclosures for the first time in years. You want to ruin me. I wanted to build with you." Silence. "That one found him." Nora continued. "You turned partnership into ownership. You turned loyalty into weakness. You turned marriage into a stage where I was only useful when quiet." Julian's voice softened in a way that might have fooled her once. "I made mistakes." "No, a mistake is forgetting a date. You built a life where humiliating me became entertainment for your family. I can fix this. You cannot even access your accounts." He exhaled sharply. "Is that what this is? You want me to beg?" Nora looked out at the water. "No, Julian, begging would only prove you still think this is personal." "It is personal." "To you," she said. "To the bank it is risk. To the courts it will be evidence. To me it is closure." His voice hardened again. "You think people will respect you after this? They will call you bitter. They will say you used your position to attack your husband. Let them. You will be alone." Nora smiled faintly, not because it was funny, but because it was old. Evelyn had said that years ago after Nora declined to host a political dinner with 2 hours' notice. "Women like you end up alone." Back then, Nora apologized. Now she answered differently. "I was lonelier beside you than I will ever be without you." She ended the call. The next morning, Nora held her first official press conference as chair of Meridian World Bank. She did not mention betrayal. She did not mention the gate. She did not mention Marissa, Evelyn, or Claudia. She stood before cameras in a cream suit and spoke about governance, financial accountability, worker protection, regulatory compliance, and responsible lending. Her voice was steady, her posture was controlled. She did not perform pain, she performed competence. That frightened Julian more than tears would have. Meridian World Bank is conducting a full review of facilities connected to Blackwood Urban Holdings and related entities, she said. Our priority is protecting legitimate workers, vendors, depositors, investors, and the integrity of the financial system. No individual, no matter how prominent, is above documentation. A reporter raised his hand. "Mrs. Blackwood, is this connected to your marriage?" Nora looked at him. "My marriage did not sign the loan covenants." The room reacted quietly, but the line was already viral before she left the podium. By noon, Blackwood Urban Holdings board requested an emergency meeting. Julian arrived late and angry. The boardroom that once applauded him now watched him with the caution people reserve for unstable elevators. Men who had toasted his courage now studied printed documents. Women who had smiled through his interruptions now asked about risk exposure. His oldest investor, Chief Balagun, sat at the head of the table with a walking stick across his lap and disappointment carved into his face. Julian remained standing. "This is a temporary attack," he said. "Nora is using her new position emotionally." Chief Balagun tapped the stick once. "Sit down." Julian stared. "Chief, sit." Julian sat. The chief opened a folder. "Did you fail to disclose personal guarantees tied to the Atlantic District?" Julian's eyes moved to Darpo, who looked down. "We disclosed what was required." "That is not an answer." Julian's jaw clenched. The structure was complex. Did you use corporate hospitality accounts for personal spending connected to Miss Marissa Cole? No. Darpo closed his eyes. Chief Balagun slid a document across the table. This says otherwise. Julian did not touch it. Another board member spoke. Did Claudia Blackwood alter foundation records to reduce Nora's legal visibility? Julian looked up sharply. Why is that relevant? Because the foundation owns land adjacent to Phase 3. It is family, internal administration. No, Chief Balagun said, it is collateral contamination. The phrase landed heavily. Julian looked around the room and saw the shape of betrayal forming. But this time, he was not the one committing it. He was the one being abandoned by people who loved profit more than loyalty. You are all forgetting who built this, he said. Chief Balagun's eyes hardened. No, we are remembering who signed for it. By the end of the meeting, Julian was temporarily removed from operational control pending investigation. The vote was not unanimous. It was worse. It was quiet. No shouting, no dramatic speeches, no loyalty declarations, just hands raised around a polished table one by one until Julian Blackwood became a founder without command. When he returned to the mansion, Evelyn was waiting in the foyer with 3 suitcases. Where is the driver? She demanded. Julian loosened his collar. Why? I need to move some things from the penthouse before Nora's people touch them. You cannot go there. Evelyn's eyes flashed. Do not tell me what I cannot do. This is your fault. He stared at her. My fault. Yes, I told you to control your wife. The word control made him flinch now. Evelyn did not notice. You let her sit in corners reading papers like a witch. You let her know too much. You let her embarrass this family. Julian laughed without humor. You laughed at her last night. And you allowed her to walk away with power. For a moment, mother and son looked at each other and saw the truth they had avoided for years. They had not underestimated Nora separately. They had built a family culture around underestimating her together. Marissa appeared at the top of the stairs with her suitcase. Julian turned. Where are you going? She descended carefully, away from here. With what money? With whatever dignity I still have. Evelyn scoffed. Dignity? You entered another woman's home with luggage. Marissa stopped mid-step. Pain crossed her face, followed by anger. You invited me. Evelyn lifted her chin. I tolerated you. Marissa looked at Julian. Do you hear your mother? Julian rubbed his forehead. Not now. Marissa laughed softly. That is all you ever say when women start sounding human. She walked to the door, then turned back. Nora sent me a letter months ago. She warned me that the accounts I was using could destroy my credit if they were challenged. I thought she was jealous, but she was giving me a way out. Julian said nothing. Marissa's eyes filled, but she refused to cry in front of Evelyn. I chose wrong. Then she left. Evelyn watched her go and muttered, good riddance. Julian looked at his mother then, really looked at her. The expensive lace, the perfect Jill, the face still trained into superiority, though her penthouse was gone, her social standing bleeding, her son's empire collapsing. For years, he had thought Evelyn made him strong. Now he wondered if she had only made him cruel. 3 days later, the court granted Nora temporary exclusive occupancy rights over the mansion pending divorce proceedings. Julian received the order in the study. The same study where he had planned her removal. The same study where Claudia drafted reputation attacks. The same study where he had once promised Nora, during their first year in the house, that every room belonged to her taste and spirit. Back then she had chosen soft colors, Nigerian art, warm lighting, and wide spaces for family gatherings. Evelyn complained that the house looked too welcoming, as if welcome were a design flaw. Over time, Julian replaced warmth with status. Maury marble, Maury gold, Maury rooms nobody used, Maury portraits of himself shaking hands with powerful men. Now he was being ordered to leave it. His lawyer, sweaty despite the air conditioning, cleared his throat. "We can appeal." Julian held the document. "Can we win?" The lawyer hesitated. That was answer enough. Outside, staff moved carefully through the halls. Nora had not asked them to throw Julian's belongings onto the driveway. She had arranged movers, inventory officers, and legal supervision. Even in victory, she gave him more dignity than he had given her. It made him hate her for 1 second. Then it made him ashamed. Claudia's downfall was less graceful. For 2 weeks, she resisted every notice, challenged every filing, called every judge she knew, every politician who owed her favors, every journalist she had once fed stories. But influence behaves differently when money stops answering the phone. Her townhouse had been tied to a complex guarantee involving a Blackwood subsidiary. Nora's team did not need to fabricate anything. They simply followed the paper Claudia created. The property was not fully hers. The occupancy was conditional. The condition had failed. On a bright Thursday morning, Claudia stood outside the townhouse gates with 2 suitcases, 3 garment bags, 1 handbag, and the furious disbelief of a woman who had spent years making other people homeless through paperwork. No one laughed. That was the worst part. Evelyn's humiliation had been public and loud. Julian's was televised. Marissa's was financial and social, but Claudia was cold, legal, quiet, a clean blade. Nora arrived after the enforcement officers had finished. Claudia turned when she saw the car. "You came to watch." Nora stepped out, wearing sunglasses and a simple white dress. "No, I came to make sure your personal belongings were handled properly." Claudia laughed, still pretending to be decent. "No, choosing to be." The words irritated Claudia more than cruelty would have. "You think you are different from us?" Claudia snapped. "You used power, you used documents, you used money. Welcome to the family." Nora removed her sunglasses. "No, Claudia, you used documents to hide harm. I used them to reveal it. That difference is why you are angry." Claudia's mouth tightened. For a moment, the older woman looked tired, not defeated exactly, but aged by the sudden absence of control. "I told Julian you were dangerous," Claudia said. Nora nodded. "You were right. I should have removed you earlier." "You tried." Claudia's eyes narrowed. Nora stepped closer, voice low enough that only Claudia could hear. "The foundation records, the mental instability memo, the attempted asset exclusion, the private email to Julian suggesting he provoked me into an incident before divorce. I have all of it." Claudia went still. Nora continued, "You are not on the street because I hate you. You are on the street because you built every path you are now walking." Claudia looked away first. Nora turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. The women your foundation displaced from the waterfront settlement 5 years ago will receive restitution from recovered Blackwood assets." Claudia spun back. "That land was legally acquired. Legality is being reviewed. You will destroy the family name." Nora looked at her calmly. "No, I will return it to the people who paid for it." The investigation widened. What began as a frozen account became a national case study in how arrogance hides inside development language. Blackwood Atlantic District had promised jobs, homes, infrastructure, and modernity. Some of that promise was real. Nora never denied it. But beneath the glossy renderings were unpaid vendors, inflated contracts, undisclosed related party transactions, political favors, and land disputes settled with pressure rather than fairness. Nora did not burn the project down. That disappointed those who wanted revenge to look like fire. Instead, she did something more devastating. She saved the parts worth saving and removed Julian from the parts he had poisoned. Meridian restructured the financing. Legitimate contractors were paid under supervision. Worker wages were prioritized. Questionable contracts were suspended. Land claims were reopened. Community compensation was renegotiated. The project was renamed from Blackwood Atlantic District to Atlantic Civic Quarter. Julian's face disappeared from the billboards. In its place came images of the workers, engineers, architects, and community leaders who had actually built the future. The first time Julian saw the new billboard, he was sitting in traffic in a borrowed car. Not because he was poor. Not yet. But because the court had restricted access to several personal vehicles tied to disputed corporate funds. He looked up and saw the place where his smile used to be. For the first time, he understood that legacy could be repossessed. Weeks passed. The divorce proceedings became uglier than Nora wanted, though not uglier than she expected. Julian's team tried to argue that her bank position created conflict. Amara responded with timelines proving the acquisition began after documented financial concerns and before the mansion lockout. Julian's team tried to paint Nora as vindictive. Amara played the gate footage. The courtroom watched Julian's mother laugh while Nora stood outside with one suitcase. Evelyn's laughter sounded different in court. At the mansion, it had sounded powerful. In court, it sounded cruel. Julian stared at the screen and did not look at Nora. Marissa was called to testify. She arrived in a modest dark dress, no jewelry except small earrings, and a face stripped of performance. Her credit had not been ruined because Nora lied. It had collapsed because disputed charges, unauthorized address usage, and suspicious financial patterns triggered formal reports. The ruin was not emotional, it was procedural. That made it harder to fight. Under oath, Marissa admitted Julian gave her access to accounts she did not understand. She admitted Evelyn encouraged her to move into the mansion. She admitted Claudia said Nora could be handled legally if she reacted badly. Then Amara asked, "Did Mrs. Blackwood ever threaten you?" Marissa looked at Nora. "No." "Did she contact you before the account review?" "Yes." "What did she send?" "A warning letter." "What did it say?" Marissa swallowed. "That I should seek independent legal advice before using any credit facilities or addresses connected to Blackwood entities." "Did she insult you?" "No." "Did she expose you publicly?" "No." "Did you take her advice?" Marissa looked down. "No." "Why?" Her voice broke slightly. "Because I believed Julian when he said she was powerless." The courtroom went silent. Nora did not smile. There is a special grief in hearing another woman describe the lie that ruined both of you. Outside court, reporters surrounded Marissa. "Do you blame Nora Blackwood?" Marissa paused on the steps. Then she said, "No, I blame the man who told both of us different stories." It was the first honest thing she had said publicly. Evelyn's fall was slower. She moved from luxury hotel to relative's guest room to a smaller apartment rented under a cousin's name. Society women who once crowded her table became busy. Her calls went unanswered. Invitations stopped. The same people who praised her elegance now whispered about how loudly she had laughed at the wrong woman. One afternoon, Nora visited the old penthouse for the first time since revoking Evelyn's access. It smelled faintly of perfume and pride. Closets overflowed. Gold-trimmed furniture crowded rooms. Framed photographs of Evelyn with powerful people lined the hallway. In the sitting room, on a glass table, Nora found a photo from the first year of her marriage. She and Julian stood beside Evelyn at a family event. Nora wore green. Julian's hand rested at her waist. Evelyn's smile looked almost kind. Nora remembered that day. She had helped Evelyn fix a torn seam minutes before the event. Evelyn, flustered and embarrassed, had allowed Nora into her dressing room. For one brief moment, they were just two women solving a problem. Evelyn even said, "You have careful hands." Later that evening, when a guest complimented the outfit, Evelyn said, "Of course, I know how to present myself." She never mentioned Nora. Nora placed the photo face down. Forgiveness did not require returning people to the rooms where they harmed you. Still, she did not throw Evelyn's belongings away. She had them packed and sent to storage for collection. Amara thought it too generous. Nora said, "No, it is strategic. How? If I become cruel, they will make my cruelty the story. Let them carry the full weight of theirs." Months later, the final court hearing drew more attention than any business trial in recent memory. Julian entered thinner, quieter, and visibly older. His beard was trimmed, his suit still expensive but no longer triumphant. Evelyn did not attend. Claudia did, sitting at the back with folded arms and a face like locked iron. Marissa came too, not for Julian, but because her testimony had become part of the record she would spend years repairing. Nora entered last. Not dramatically. Precisely. The judge issued a series of orders that turned whispers into law. Nora retained control of assets proven to be hers before and during the marriage. The mansion, tied through financial structures Julian had misrepresented, came under settlement negotiation heavily favoring Nora. Julian was removed from direct control of any restructured Meridian-backed project. Several Blackwood entities were referred for further review. Evelyn's penthouse occupancy claim was dismissed. Claudia's challenges failed. Julian sat motionless. The judgment did not leave him destitute, but it left him exposed. He would still have money after debts, penalties, and restructuring. Men like Julian rarely fall into true poverty overnight, but he lost something more essential to him than money. He lost unquestioned entry. Into banks. Into rooms. Into narratives. Into Nora's life. After court, Julian found Nora in the corridor. Amara stepped forward, but Nora lifted a hand. Julian looked at her for a long moment. "I do not know when I stopped seeing you," he said. Nora studied him. There was a time when that sentence would have broken her. She would have heard remorse and rushed to rescue the man beneath the arrogance. She would have told herself awareness was the beginning of change. Now she heard something else. A man mourning the moment blindness stopped benefiting him. "You saw me," she said. "You just thought I would stay where you placed me." He closed his eyes briefly. "I loved you once." "Yes," Nora said, "I loved you too." The honesty hurt more than accusation. Julian opened his eyes, and now. Nora looked toward the courthouse doors, where sunlight spilled across the floor. "Now I believe love without respect becomes a debt no one should keep paying." He nodded slowly, as if the words had entered somewhere deeper than pride. "Will you ever forgive me?" Nora did not answer quickly. The corridor was full of echoes, lawyers walking, reporters murmuring outside, Claudia's sharp heels in the distance. Life continuing, indifferent and exact. "I will not organize my future around punishing you," Nora said. "That is the forgiveness I can offer." Julian's face tightened. It was not the answer he wanted. It was probably the only one he deserved. 1 year later, Atlantic Civic Quarter opened its first completed section. There were no fireworks shaped like corporate logos, no giant portrait of a billionaire developer, no speech declaring one man a visionary. The ceremony was held in a public square built where an abandoned storage yard used to be. Workers attended with their families. Engineers stood beside market women whose businesses had been relocated instead of erased. Young architects took photographs in front of buildings they had actually designed. Nora stood near the back. She had refused to make herself the face of the project. That confused the media at first. They expected revenge to end with a throne, but Nora had never wanted Julian's throne. She wanted the keys to rooms women like her were told they could only decorate. The governor spoke, community leaders spoke. A female engineer named Kemi, whose small firm had nearly collapsed when Julian delayed payments, spoke about being paid in full under the new structure and rehired on fair terms. A group of workers presented Nora with a framed photograph of the site on the day construction restarted. In the photo, cranes rose against a clean morning sky. Not frozen. Working. Nora touched the frame. For a moment, she remembered standing outside the mansion gate with rain in her hair and one suitcase by her side. She remembered Julian's voice saying the mansion belonged to him. She remembered Evelyn laughing. She remembered the cold iron bars. She remembered how defeat had looked so convincing from the outside. Then she remembered what came after. The audit. The freeze. The calls. The courtrooms. The truth. The rebuilding. Amara joined her near the edge of the crowd. You should be on the stage, Amara said. Nora smiled. I own enough stages. Amara laughed softly. That sounds healthy. It sounds expensive. They both laughed. Across the square, a little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve and pointed at Nora. Is that her? The girl whispered loudly. Her mother tried to hush her, embarrassed. Nora bent slightly. Is that who? The woman who bought the bank. People nearby turned. The girl's mother looked horrified. Sorry, Ma. Nora smiled. No need. The girl looked at her with wide eyes. Why did you buy it? Nora considered giving the simple answer. Because it was strategic. Because it was profitable. Because control matters. Because no one protects you like ownership. Instead, she said, because I wanted to make sure the wrong people could not use it to hurt the right people. The girl thought about that. Can women buy banks? Nora's smile changed. There it was. The real inheritance. Not a mansion, not a penthouse, not a headline, a question breaking open inside a child's imagination. Yes, Nora said, women can buy banks. The girl grinned. At the far edge of the square, unnoticed by most, Julian stood alone. He had not been invited, but the event was public. He wore a simple grey suit and no sunglasses. For a while, he watched Nora speak to the child. Then he looked up at the buildings rising around him, the project that had survived him by becoming better without him. He expected to feel only bitterness. He did feel it. But beneath, it was something heavier. Regret, perhaps. Or the first honest understanding that he had not lost Nora because she became powerful. He had lost her because he needed her powerless. A black car pulled up behind him. Claudia sat inside, older now, still sharp, still proud, though less certain. She lowered the window. Are you coming? She asked. Julian looked once more at Nora. No, he said. Claudia followed his gaze and scoffed, still worshipping the woman who ruined us. Julian turned back to his aunt. She revealed us. Claudia's face hardened. Same thing. No, Julian said quietly, that is why we lost. He walked away from the car. Claudia watched him go, furious not because he had insulted her, but because for the first time in his life, he sounded like someone she could no longer control. Nora did not see him leave. She was walking through the square with Kemi, listening to plans for the next construction phase. A worker approached to greet her, then another. Then an elderly woman who had once fought the Blackwood land acquisition held Nora's hands and prayed for her. Nora bowed her head respectfully, receiving the prayer not like a queen, but like a daughter who knew what land, dignity, and justice meant to people who had almost lost all three. That evening, Nora returned to the mansion. The gates opened before her car arrived. She had kept the house, but changed it completely. The gold excess disappeared. The cold marble was softened. Nigerian art returned to the walls. Staff were placed on formal contracts with benefits. The West Wing became an office for her foundation, rebuilt properly this time with transparent records and women on the board who could not be erased by one family's ego. The balcony where Evelyn had laughed was now covered with potted herbs and white flowers. Nora rarely stood there. But that night she did. The air was warm, the sky deepened into violet, city lights trembled in the distance. Below, the gate stood tall and black, no longer a symbol of rejection, just metal, just architecture, just a thing that opened and closed by instruction. Nora held a cup of tea and listened to the quiet. Her phone buzzed. A message from Amaro. Final appeal dismissed. It is over. Nora read it twice. It is over. She expected joy to rush in. Instead, peace arrived quietly, like someone who knew not to knock too loudly. She walked downstairs, through the foyer where Julian had once stood with Marissa behind him, past the sitting room where Evelyn had rehearsed cruelty as comedy, past the study where Claudia had sharpened paperwork into weapons. Every room remembered something. But rooms can be taught new stories. At the front door, Nora stepped outside. The guard at the gate, Tund, now head of security, turned and nodded respectfully. "Good evening, madam." "Good evening, Tund. How is your daughter?" He smiled, "Walking now, madam, disturbing the whole house." "As she should." He laughed. Nora walked to the gate and placed her hand lightly on the iron bars. For a second, she saw herself from 1 year ago, rain-soaked, silent, suitcase beside her, husband laughing from inside his own illusion. She wanted to reach through time and tell that woman she was not losing a home. She was entering herself. But perhaps that woman already knew. Perhaps that was why she did not beg. Perhaps that was why she looked at the camera and said, "For tonight." Behind her, the mansion lights glowed warm and steady. Not flickering now. Not from a storm. Not from the beginning of anyone's downfall. This time they shone because Nora Blackwood had stopped standing outside the gates of her own life. And finally, every gate opened from her side.